Over the last year, I've been developing a sci-fi FPS in Unity, and for the last few months, I've mainly been focused on finishing the game loop for the game. In fact, I've already posted 2 videos on this topic. However, despite all of this and months of effort, I found myself in a really bad situation. The game loop was mostly dysfunctional, and the levels were subpar. In the next 10 minutes, I'll take you on my journey to fix it all, and finally complete the game loop for my game. Welcome to Devlog 11. We'll take a look at some awesome things in this video, like a complete level transformation, but I think it will be in your best interest to first get a look at the game loop itself. The game loop consists of 3 parts: prepping for missions, collecting loot on those missions, and spending that loot on upgrades, new weapons, and whatever else in the industrial district. Now we can really start, and we'll begin by tackling the biggest problem with the game loop, the industrial district. This area, which will probably receive an actual name in the future, is basically just the shop of the game. There are many problems with this area, but we'll start with the level itself. When I took a look at the old district level, I noticed some pretty major flaws, like the fact that it took a whole minute to get to the actual shops. Most of the level was just empty, irrelevant space, and a lot of the map was made lazily. All of these problems are on top of the fact that the shop interactions themselves didn't even work. So let's fix it all. I started with a visual overhaul, similar to what I did with the player's ship. When I made the old district level, I went in without much of a plan, and that led to an incredibly disastrous design. Parts of the level were stacked on top of each other, like pancakes, which was so annoying considering the 2 important parts of the map were on opposite sides. The level was also completely symmetrical, which made it feel really cheap. So I made a new plan involving scattering the shop interactions around and adding asymmetry to the level. I began by blocking out the entire industrial district, making sure to create well-defined stores and establish a vibe similar to both the size of shopping centers with the density of local markets. There's a front entrance, a credit exchange area, 4 shops, and some purely decorative areas. Now you probably don't care, but I want to quickly point out how helpful these blockouts really are. I've always been one to avoid blockouts, as my thought process is that you have to do double the work, blocking it out and then actually making it. To be honest, this is absolutely not the case, and I find that blockouts can sometimes double the speed of my level design. In fact, I tried to make the industrial district twice before without a blockout, and those attempts turned out terribly. After completing the blockout, I then went through it, cleaning up the corners and setting up the proportions correctly. I then added hundreds of props to the walls and the floors, making sure that no place from no angle felt empty or unfinished. I used around 9 or 10 props and simply placed them all around the industrial district. Due to this variety, it was easy to decorate the floor of the district. However, the same cannot be said for the ceiling. I've only created 2 ceiling props, a sunroof and this diagonal window. Because of this, I was really restricted in creating the roof, and despite spending hours on this area, I still feel like it's lacking something and will probably come back to it later. I then placed hundreds of grass patches, trees, and bushes over the map, placing extra care in the center tree as I wanted it to almost look majestic. With the inside of the district nearing completion, I decided to decorate the exterior of the level. This was much more difficult than decorating the exterior of the player's ship, as the ship was pretty flat and much smaller in scale. Regardless, I got to work, painstakingly placing various panels around the exterior. I also added many smaller props, but I don't think anyone will ever notice those. With the panels in place, I added many antennae to the area. I love the effect it gives when you see the antenna from the inside, as it really grounds the level. Now, this is where the real improvement comes in. I'd previously made this shop interaction, but it was nothing more than a visual. It didn't change recurrency or unlock any items on the ship. Now, this is going to be a bit technical, but just bear with me for a bit. I started with a basic prototype for the shop interactions and got the visual of the interaction working. I then set code in place to do a few things. check if the player can afford the item. If they can, subtract the price of the item from their credits. Save the item as a string using player prefs, and then set it to being unlocked in the shop manager. When you get back to the ship manager will run through the player prefs as if they're in an array, and will unlock new items that you've bought. In the player's ship, I set up all the items, so that they can actually lock or unlock based on whether or not you have them. I did this for the weapons and skins, but since I haven't set up abilities or charms yet, I'll leave those for later. Now that I had a functional shop interaction in place, I went through each store, placing the items and decorating the floor, walls, and ceiling. I really like the cramped marketplace vibe I get every time I enter one of these stores. As always, I ended the level design with various particle effects. I set up some ambient particle systems, and then implemented some god rays and various other localized effects. By the way, let me know what you think of the god rays. Since I'm using the built-in render pipeline, I don't have access to real volumetric lighting, so this is my best attempt at replicating that. I think we've done a great job with the industrial district, but we're not done yet. Coming back to the ship, I need to improve and add functionality to a lot of the interactables. I began with the weapon equipping station, slightly tweaking it to make equipping weapons quicker and easier. Previously, to equip a weapon, you would click on it, which would zoom the camera in. Now though, clicking on a weapon will leave the camera in place, making it easier to equip several weapons. In addition, if a weapon is equipped, it will clearly indicate that, along with its inventory slot. Next up was the customization system. I'd previously set up the interaction itself, involving the ability to switch between weapons and customize them. However, I changed some pretty major things. Firstly, the weapons you can customize are the ones in your inventory, instead of all your weapons. Secondly, you can't customize individual attachments, as I found that to be extremely difficult to actually save into levels. I also added some small improvements to the interface. With that in place, I set up a system to save skins using a skin manager, and place them on weapons at the start of a level. The skins you set, save, so you don't have to set them up every time you go on a mission. The next interactable is the holotable, which allows you to select levels and missions. Previously, it only sent you to one hardwired level, and didn't display any information in regards to that level. I also set it up in a way that if I wanted to add more missions, it would take an egregious amount of time. Instead, I set up a mission manager, in which I can simply add missions to an array. The rest of the process is set up in code, through which it spawns a button, sets up the scene, and displays the necessary information. Despite all this, I was still left with a problem. When using the holotable, the background made it very difficult to actually see anything. I couldn't read the text, and the buttons themselves were very hard to see. I ended up using a tinted overlay and a world space blur to help separate the background from the holotable. The boarding pod model also received an update. When I first made the pod, I thought the model was passable, but after trying to create cutscenes with it, I realized it didn't work. I redesigned the pod to make it look more like a ship than a root, involving more antenna and paneling. I also added small animations and cleaned up many of the other interactions on the ship. The last thing I did was add some god rays to the player's ship, and with that, we've reached the end of this video. If you enjoyed, feel free to check out various other videos on this channel, and join the development journey of this project. With that said, I'll see you in the next one.